This is Paula from Plantland, and we're going to talk today about growing beans. Beans are another thing, like so few crops that do really well in our cool Montana weather. Beans are something you can start to think about planting in some parts of the valley within the next 2 to 3 weeks. The soil temperature is getting warm enough to do that. If you reference our online soil temperature germination chart, you'll see that beans are in that lower range. They're one of the things that are in low range, or the lower temperature range. Plantland sells also bean seeds in bulk because beans are one of those things that preserve very well, that we can, that we can freeze, and that a lot of people like to do. I know I freeze a lot of beans, and then we have beans that we've grown over the summer that we eat all winter long. So we have several different kinds here. We have two kinds of pole bush, and it's jade of
bush.
Pole beans, and jade is a bush bean. The difference between those two, bush beans tend to grow like a little bush. They don't usually require any elaborate support. Sometimes you can just put twigs and sticks in the ground to kind of prop them up. You can use small tomato cages to prop them up because once they get lots of beans on them, they get a little floppy. Pole beans, on the other hand, are something that need a structure to climb on. So pole beans, we usually grow next to a fence, or we build kind of teepees out of bamboo that then we then allow the beans to grow up on. And it's important, just like peas, that they be allowed to vine up, because every bit of that vine that gets exposed to light and air is going to be capable of flowering and producing beans. If you just let them sprawl on the ground, they're not going to produce very well for you. They're going to, too much of the vine will be shaded by other parts of the vine. Beans are something that they can be a little tough to germinate. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to soak the seeds overnight a little bit, just in a little cup of water overnight before you plant them. It can be very helpful to do that to get them to germinate a little bit easier. Beans are a big seed, so it's something that's going to get planted fairly deep, so we're not looking for light to germinate these. We're looking for warmth to germinate these. So we can do, if we're worried about the weather being a little cool, we can do this kind of method again. These are my peas planted because it's just starting to get barely warm enough down on Flathead Lake for me to think about planting my peas, but I'm going to give it another week or so. It's the third week of March right now. I could do beans like this also, just put a few bean plants in here and then plant those out later when things get a little warmer. You can also do the little peat pots, little cocoa fiber pots, or in the reduce, reuse, recycle, the half toilet paper roll that you fill with starting mix, and then you just plant your seeds in. So something like this, I'm just going to take this home and I'm going to put a plastic bag over it, tie the plastic bag shut, and then I'm just going to put this on a sunny spot. Beans are something, like a lot of our garden vegetables, that you have to harvest them. If you don't harvest your beans, if you let them get too big, I'm sure you've all eaten beans that were too big and too woody and just didn't have a great flavor, but it also will stop the plant from producing. If you allow it the beans to get too big because you're not harvesting, what will happen is the vine or the bush will actually stop producing new beans, because now the plant is putting its energy into producing seeds inside those bean pods, and it's forgetting about wanting to grow new beans. So it's something that you have to keep harvesting. Beans are something that require good sun. They will tolerate light shade, but not heavy shade. They're not a great one. They need a little more light than some of the other things we talk about will grow in light shade. So I usually tell people that they require good sun. If they're going to be shaded at all, they can be shaded in the hottest late part of the day. We sell all kinds of trellis netting and bird netting that you can use to grow beans up on. I grow my beans like I do my peas in some little square foot wooden boxes that are next to our fence. So that's square foot is about what this pot is. It's about a foot diameter. It's about a foot deep. You can put 2 to 3 bean plants in a pot like this and grow beans very easily in containers. We're going to do a video on gardening in containers later. Beans are something that require very good soil, very rich soil. We think of beans and peas both as being very heavy feeders. So there's something where you're going to start with really rich soil that's you've put lots of compost in or put lots of manure in, and you're going to feed it over the course of the summer with something like the Happy Frog that I always recommend. This is fruit and flower. That middle number, phosphorus, and that third number, potassium, are going to encourage flowering. And remember, that's how you get beans. The vine flowers and then you get a bean. So I would put this on once they've germinated and are about this big. I give them a little dose of the Happy Frog. Maybe a month later, give them another dose of it. And then maybe a month after that, give them another dose of Happy Frog. Beans are really easy. The reason these bulk beans are such a hot pink is they've been treated with fungicide. And fungicide is actually important when we're talking about the kinds of seeds that get sold as bulk seed. One of the reasons it's important is there are different kinds of pathogens that actually you could get from different kinds of seeds that then will persist in your soil that aren't going to be good for your plants. Where something like this, where it's been treated with the fungicide, we know we aren't going to bring those pathogens into our soil here in the valley. That's not a really great explanation. You can get a better one if you look up fungicide on bulk beans. That's the simple part. Really simple to grow. It's a good crop to try for beginning gardeners. Usually germinates okay, and usually you end up with a fairly good sized plant fairly fast. Not a lot more to say about beans. That's pretty good. This is Paula from Plantland, and happy gardening.